ended up doing honeydews yesterday, and so it was alright. Something different.
Successful.
Being in the garage and cutting wood, got a saw out. So that was fun. It's nice to usually, like I said, different than sitting behind a computer or answering phone calls or listening to somebody complain about something. So, do you find that you have to reset a little bit after a holiday with your classroom management? Kind of remind people of the procedures. It's going to get worse. Thanksgiving's coming in a couple weeks, but the real big one is Christmas with everyone has 3 weeks off. County, y'all have 3 weeks too. You have to synchronize your calendar with Madera Unified. Yeah. So it gets kind of crazy, but there's also good news. When you come back in January, you get to reset also, and if classroom management hasn't been what you wanted it to be, you get a really good chance of making it the way you want it to be. And so it's almost like day one all over again, but a lot faster. Because they know you and you know them, so you can make that work in a hurry. All right. I had the clicker here to give it to you. No, I have it here.
It's a different clicker.
In the pocket?
Probably. You're doing what your dad does. Do you want my clicker?
Yeah, I just gave it to you.
Do you want it? I didn't know.
It's plugged in.
Oh. I thought you were telling me to put it away. Whatever. I had a 3-day weekend too.
Well, you're on. I'm going to let you go.
Oh, right on. Okay, so this is my thing. I love lesson planning. Of course, you keep hearing that because I say that about everything. But I love lesson planning. I think it's key to the control of your classroom. If you're too slow, too fast, boring, talk too much, which, you know, how ironic that we're standing up here talking, but when you create a lesson plan, this is all stuff you already know. You come with an objective, right? Whatever your objective is, and then you decide how you're going to get there, right? What activities you're going to do, how you're going to check for understanding, blah, blah, blah. So what I want to encourage is some of you do this, some of you do it at length, and some of you probably just the bare minimum, which is what I did. But you have your objective. And my question is, do you know all your kids' learning styles? Not what you've observed. Do you truly know their learning styles? Because, case in point, my brother was brilliant. You wouldn't know it now. But he was brilliant in school. And yet he was so bored because he needed to be hands-on to stay awake. So he was bored and, of course, became a pothead, and now he smells funny. But no, he's actually doing very well, but we never thought that would happen because he refused to cut his hair. But he actually got a job at a hippie company, and he's doing great. So you got standard objectives, learning styles, and then interest. I don't know that it really occurs to many of us to cater our lessons to their strengths and interests. We're so stuck in what the state's telling us, the national's telling us, the nation's telling us what we have to teach, right? It's almost scripted sometimes. And we forget that there's personality behind there. You know, I can probably throw something at you that 90% of you are going to get. But if I threw something, there'll still be a 10% of you that aren't getting it. And what about those 10%? I mean, first of all, my problem with that is you're losing that kid. And when you're losing them, unfortunately, it shows that you don't respect his learning style or her learning style enough. So how do you deal with this? And I think this is one of the few things I did okay, is I never checked their learning styles, but I did do their interests. And that's why I want to encourage you to do it, because that makes your lesson planning, granted it's a bigger picture and probably a bigger workload in the beginning, but it'll make your lessons far more effective. Teaching should be such that what is offered is perceived as a valuable gift and not a hard duty. So what that tells me is trick them into learning. Make it fun, right? You agree? Yes. So you trick them into learning, make it fun. It may not even be, like when I think fun, I think games, but some of the kids, they don't do games. They want something that's going to be fun to their brain, like something that's going to entertain them. And different kids are entertained differently. So when you're creating a lesson plan, you should know your students' learning styles. And we're going to talk about how to get there. You should know your students' interests. You need to know, obviously, your objective. They're posted everywhere. And your students' learning levels. And the reason why I say that is this. I'm not asking you to track. But if I know she has trouble writing, and I know that she is a strong writer, why can't I pair them together? Because if we're doing a group assignment, it may not be sitting down to write an essay. It might be a lot of verbal things in our group work that she can help her with without even realizing that's what they're doing. Does that make sense? Right? If you're really, you know the kid that's always on their computer writing, they're probably just chatting with somebody or doing something on video games, but that kid obviously is computer adept because they're always on the computer. So why not pair them with somebody who's not? So how many of you do surveys at the beginning of the year? Surveys, send them home. So a lot of people do the questions like, who do you live with? What pets do you have? What holidays do you celebrate? Which of course indicates then what faith they are. A lot of times we don't think to ask, what are your hobbies? Especially elementary school kids. I think we in general think that, they do the same thing pretty much every day. Do they play video games? That's going to tell you a lot about that kid. Do they play sports? What sports? Music. Are they into music? Are they into traveling? Does their family travel all the time? Do they like to cook? Are they into fashion? The kid that's constantly looking in her mirror is clearly into probably makeup. I'm talking junior high, high school right there. I hope elementary school, the kid's not staring at themselves. Computers. What does the student enjoy reading? So, you have your survey, which is good for you to know too, and parents will reveal a lot more than you want to know. Oh, his father died last year and I've remarried, he doesn't handle it well. You're like, thank you, more than I wanted to know. But it helps you, because if that kid has a meltdown one day, you probably have a really good idea that he's having a meltdown because of what's going on with mom and stepdad. The parents will reveal things sometimes in code, but what they really tell you is, they'll tell you the kid's learning strengths. They'll say, he hates reading, absolutely hates reading, will not read anything. Well, I would say, I'll find something. But the mother's telling you this kid doesn't read, which means they don't read at home, right? Huge indicator of assistance and participation at home. These are all things that you can find out through a couple questions on your questionnaire. Who does the parent live with? You usually get a litany from the parent about why the step or the dad is a jerk and all that. Does your student have any medical issues other than what the school knows that I should be aware of? There might be a kid that maybe has trouble falling asleep, and later in life they're going to find out he's narcoleptic. Might be good for you to know that. So, point is, this is where you pick the parents' brains on what they're into. If the parent says, I don't know, my kid sits around on the couch all day eating, okay, you're clearly, he's watching TV. You can kind of get an idea of what this kid does all day long. And you can kind of start to think, what does that say about him as a kid? What does that say about him as a learner? How is this going to affect my lesson? So you got this information. The majority of your parents are going to come back with, they watch TV all day, they're on their computers all day, they're gaming all day, or they're playing sports all day, or they go to sports. What you're going to do with that information, if you're trying to apply it to your lesson plan, is collect it. Collect it, maybe if it's not too erratic, like every kid's not into something else, maybe group them. So you have an idea of what you're facing, what your class is interested in, what they enjoy doing, and I'll tell you why that'll come into play. So this is why you do them. You're going to create assignments that interest them, and you will find out from those questionnaires just how involved the parents are. Like if you're sending stuff home for projects, and you find out that these parents work all night, you're not going to get anything. So that's where you rethink and go, okay, they're going to be doing this in class then, and I'm going to be able to rope that in and supervise it. Survey, questionnaire, kind of the same thing. The parent will usually tell the barriers without question. Very few parents are going to act like their kid's perfect, which is what I have found. We already talked about that. Okay, so now what you guys are going to do is you're going to do a quick learning style for you. And here's the thing, some of you will say, oh, I've done this before. We change whatever phases in our life that we're going through. So you'll have, let's say 5, I don't think it's very long, 5 minutes to complete this.
And the QR code is also on your agenda.
I'm just going to set my phone because I don't want to mess up the screen.
Is it the teacher learning time?
I'm going to do it too. Nice. That'll get you far. How do you eat?
It's only 2 week copies.
Your carbs. Actually, the Cheez-Its are not too bad. So what we'll do is, so at the end of the day, then you can just do it.
What's in there? I just changed it.
The order. Oh.
Go off and talk.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but they say don't do it. They say that I shouldn't because there's not enough carbs at all. Today I was trying to on the old Madera, and it's and I didn't have the word on it. And I just had to look. Because I felt like I never got stuck first by the time I ran into somebody's. And it was literally on the table by keeping me a little quiet. I mean, I have stuff in the car that I took, but it's not near yourself. I mean, obviously, I did it fine. I have crackers and peanut butter, you know, like little bits. Bless you. But I need like honey or something when I'm not low. But I was driving, so I need something hot.
Different than my 38 I'm used to. But then June, I'm sure I only have 25, so I was like, come on. Yeah, it's even. And I do a lot of cardio stuff, so it's
So when you finish, take about 2 minutes to just discuss whether you think that fits you and how you think that may affect your teaching. Does that make sense? Like how you perceive that will affect your teaching. So go ahead and talk at your table groups.
20%.
Or like I didn't do any of them.
When they just tell you one, like I am the rocks,
I don't like to take different
I mean, I am a visual person, and I saw like reading if someone tells me, you know, this so I can see how that. So now I'm like, and as far as teaching, I think I try and do
someone on the auditorium 20
came back and I was I'm just putting my high kids are really kind of keeping off. My low kids are always trying, but they just can't. And my high kids are I'm like,
whatever your distraction is.
I'm just now. I feel like starting to. But then it gets to a point where starting to see because I have a pretty good as far as like the dark side stuff. But they're finally kind of because I'm seeing it's like. Yeah, so they get
definitely hands-on. Yeah. And I think if I were there, Because last year, at the end of the year, in first grade, we were about 2 months. Because I was looking at that.
That's usually done through some
And
sort of
I sit
assessment.
right in there, I love it. And everything was hands on, let's do this, let's do this. Rolling sentences for ELD. So I just think it depends on what it's high school. Yeah.
I remember that being I love that in like that grade level. Because she took songs and she'd cut out pieces and then we had to go and fill in with like blanks and then she'd tell us in English and then back in Spanish and then we'll go in Spanish and do it. I don't know, that's like the best subject. I like
There's different things, yeah, there's a lot, but I am very, like, since you have all this you can do, you don't even know what to do.
yeah, it's too much.
It's too much, and that's why I'm sad I have to do both.
Don't forget to sign in.
Especially the long taps.
Was there someone there for you? 7th and 8th grade math, like ET, and then 8th grade teacher.
Okay, go and wrap it up.
He teaches ELC.
I find that
Where'd you go to school?
Me?
Yeah.
I went to school in
I feel like I don't know my street. They're all great, like 7, 8.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Hopefully did any of you get different results than you've gotten before? Yeah, I think as we get older and we go through different phases, being parents, being young and free, totally different responsibilities. And I think our learning styles change. When I was young, I could sleep through a class, and as long as I could hear it, I remembered everything. Now, I can't even do homework or anything with noise in my ear because I don't know how my kid does it. And I don't get it. I can't do it. When I was younger, I could do it, all of it. So we did the table chat. Learning styles. You probably learned from this test. You have tactile, hands-on, auditory, which is listening, but that also means music, learning to music, and social, talking. And visual, you see to learn, pictures, you're artistic. Well, maybe you think you're artistic. What's the matter?
No, I'm just arguing with myself.
So tactile, most people do well with tactile. But you're going to have a few kids that are like, I'm not touching that. I'm not doing that. I'm not working in groups. I used to do a lot of building stuff. Well, they're not going to... The kid that hates social, you've got to give them an out. Whether it's social like that or tactile groups. So what I always tried to do was give that kid something to do that wasn't scary. So like, okay, you're the note taker, right? You're the note taker, or I want you to pay attention to who takes the lead and who doesn't, how that person exerted their leadership. I mean, there's all these different things you can do for that kid that is really quiet or scared of it. I do believe in pushing some kids to put themselves out there. But I think early on, especially in groups, those kids that are almost paralyzed with fear. My niece is that way, not the one that lives with me, but my other niece. And when she was a kid, if we clapped, like, she played soccer. So if she did something, we'd all clap, and she'd be like, shh, shh, shh. Like she didn't want any attention, good or bad. The kid just scored a 32 out of 36 on the ACT, and she doesn't want us to say anything to her. I'm like, I've never had a kid score that high, ever. So, she's that kind of kid that don't talk to me, don't talk about me, don't smile at me, don't bring any. So you're going to have that kid in class that, might do it because you want them to do it, but they might be so petrified that they're almost ready to throw up. Sometimes that's good, but every time it's not. I actually stole this from somebody in one of the other classes, but she took their learning styles, put it in a grid, and made it a pie chart so that she could glance at it quick, which we're going to ask you to do as well. But like you can look real quick, and her kids are auditory and visual primarily. So if you know that, when you approach your lesson, wouldn't that give you some advice on what to do? If your whole class was auditory, then you could probably sit up here, lecture, maybe play a few songs to let them remember things, but you wouldn't have to approach all of it with hands-on or visual. Does that make sense? I mean, I guess I'm kind of talking. But this should motivate and direct part of your lessons. This is on your, I believe it's on your chart, on your thing. This one is for those of you that are elementary school. Junior high and high school can take the test we just did. But elementary probably, I think this is a little simpler.
For your students, not for you.
Yeah, for your students. It's on your thing. Let's say, you might have already talked about some of this, but I'm going to give you 2-3 minutes. Throw out some ideas to your table. Like, share some ideas that you think would reach the different styles. So not your typical stuff, like sitting down and reading them a book. Elementary school, we know you do that. We know you go through the dates, the seasons. Okay, that is direct teaching. That's auditory. If you will go through and think of some cool activities that you did in your class, reaching all or one of these types of styles. Does that make sense? Am I making my direction clear? Okay, you got 2 minutes.
Are we doing it? So then, we're doing that. Are you into that? We're on Dawson. So that's been an experience. We went, we took apart all those things and did different things. So we went from like university, and then now we're like I3, so we're going to we're doing that. We just finished before decimals. We put all of our decimals into I guess, and then before we did multiplication, division of forms, and then we did addition, subtraction of decimals, and now we're decimal to and so last week was the model thing, and I had them like in a group trying to solve a problem, and then they shared with each other, so it's like the first time it was actually successful.
Okay, so here's my question. So you're out to test it, okay? You know how they have them virtual? Would that still be considered if it's in the computer? Because you still have to drag it and drop it and break it up. It's just nothing visual.
I feel like that's more visual. Those are cool though. I didn't think I have
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
It's a struggle with, No, the manipulative's kind of scary, but I'm branching out.
Yeah. I like the
We're using it. We're trying. I'll have to look
they
into
never gave us enough in our class.
What kind do you use? Like the Unifix cubes, or which ones are you?
No, it's the base 10. It's the ones
The green ones.
There's orange, and there's like a tip, like a stick with 10 on it, and then a tube that's 1, and then...
Oh, ours are green.
I know. I think it's on mine.
We haven't got to it yet. We just did like the one time. That's serious. The phone, like the red and yellow ones, and since they get a container, they have to shake it and drop it. Yeah, the circle ones, and they got it because they can see like what number makes 10. So it makes 10. So it was that visual to do it.
That's pretty cool.
And then they had to write their stuff out. And then they were talking the whole time, because I do one, so it could be different from mine, like as long as we all had 10, so it's like, what do you see on yours? I like it, like the first time doing it with this.
Yeah, I really
Doing it, because I've always thought about it, I was like,
And how they do with it?
they did really good. Yeah, the only like 1 or 2 that couldn't handle it, they had to be partnered. But the rest could handle it, they want the phone, our little thing to play with. Like, that's pretty good. They have their Richard Madera, their real advocates in their desk, and they get to take it out for math and do it for like their math facts. Yeah, they actually use it a lot. And then my other kids, my high ones, like just put the big number, and then you'll see them write the big number, and then they'll put the fingers and they'll start counting. And I'm like, I don't think it works because you got it. How about verbal? All the time. Say pressure all the time.
Yeah. So go ahead and wrap it up. Anybody want to share some of the ideas out? Anybody over there have an excellent idea?
I like the shake and spill for math, where it's like the little foam, red and yellows, and then they shake it and they try to make like 10, because that's all they have in their thing. Like, how many are yellow, how many are red? They can be different from mine, and they can talk about it. Or like if it's one-on-one, they're just seeing the manipulatives.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Manipulatives, especially when they are individual, hits quite a few, and you don't threaten anybody. So I think it's a safe manipulative that also, especially with math, because math is so hard to teach, for kids to understand how it relates. Anybody back there have an idea? Mary, anyone?
So I have a student that has a little extra energy and is still learning the basics with his alphabet and numbers. And so I put, I laminated some cards up with the alphabet and have some laminated cards with the numbers also. And I put Velcro on the bottom. So like I'll sign a letter and he has to jump on it.
Oh, that's cool.
Like identification. So he does a lot more. I've got another kid that's learning math and using like manipulatives and stuff. But the 3 lowest level ones, sometimes I'll make a game out of it, like who can do the right letter. So
That's an excellent idea. Plus you have them up and moving. Anybody over here?
oh, he has to share his
Oh boy.
Mr. Lamb.
Hello. So I teach one section of Spanish, beginning Spanish, and so what I had students do was their assignment was they had to pick 3 people to be in a group. 2 people were going to enter into a restaurant, and 1 person was going to be the waiter or waitress. So they had to develop a menu. So they had to have food on the menu, all the items had to be in Spanish, they had to have the name of a restaurant, of course, whatever the items cost. And so they had to then develop a dialogue, so the person who was working at the restaurant would greet them as they came in, they had to kind of seat them and then, welcome them. The people had to order what they wanted to eat, and then they had to make some comment as to whether the restaurant was good or bad, whatever they thought it would be. But we did it in the form of a skit, and so then that way the kinesthetic learners are able to participate there. There's an auditory portion, a visual portion, a verbal portion, and then they had a written part, which is they could use their notes if they wanted to because they'd be in class. They could look at it a little bit if they needed to. So
That's
I
awesome.
tried to hit on all those.
Especially because Spanish is a hard thing to teach.
Yeah.
Spanish and math are probably the 2 hardest. Anyone over there?
I just recently was teaching my 7th graders input-output tables, and just to get them to start looking for the pattern or the rule, which we eventually move it to, we use tangrams. And so I had some patterns already created. What happened to this side to get to equal this side, and so they started looking for patterns. So each student ended up having to create their own.
Oh, cool.
And then we played musical chairs, and another student ended up at their desk and had to figure out their pattern and then write it down.
That's cool. And that whole pattern thing, pre-math, pre-reading, I mean, it's good stuff. Over here?
I talked a little bit about how I do gallery walks, put the posters up, and then, get them up and talking to each other. That once like the gallery walk of them adding to the posters is done, then groups are assigned to posters and they have to talk to each other. What's the main idea? What's the trend of it?
That's awesome. Very avid. Yeah. Anybody else want to add in? I think all of these are awesome, and like as a teacher, I think the cool thing about all of us getting together is stealing ideas. So, when you hear something about like the gallery walk, think of how you could do that even at your different levels that you teach. I mean, there's some version of that you could absolutely use. Or did it go off? Rude. So right now, you have 5 minutes to go to the restroom, do whatever, and then the second half of this we're hitting pretty hard because Steve's got to leave, so he's going to get his stuff in first. So 5 minutes, go, be happy.
No, we don't need progress
I thought I think it was Wednesday, Tuesday. Our principal principal was talking about having them on last Friday. Like there was like a miscommunication,
Oh, okay.
and I was so stressed because
Thought you had to have it all done on Friday?
because I was planning on this Friday all along. So I've been like a little stressed on a Tuesday night. Like, oh no,
Is that exactly what you need?
Where'd you go?
my husband came and picked him up.
Oh, he was so cute.
Hey, when you come down the hill and you make your way over here, what time do you get usually?
Normally, depends on where I am, but sometimes I cut across 145 and just come down 99.
Is that
Kind of
standard way?
Unless you want to go all the way into Fresno. And just
The road over here is like closed, there's construction in it, so there's, you can kind of take a back way, but it's,
well, you could go 145, or you could do
I probably just do
Valley Children's and go 9.
that. Where is 9?
It's the one that loops around right next to Valley Children's.
So you have to take that exit then.
Yeah, and you just follow it out,
That might be,
and that'll end up out here.
that's,
And 9's pretty empty.
So are you all ready for it?
145 not so bad. And then you have to still go through
Oh
the
wow.
145.
We had our zoo field trip today.
closer to here.
Today? Oh, you must be excited.
Yeah, I didn't know that was happening, I thought it was just went to the hospital.
No, I thought that too until one day we were
We
off.
had like
No, it
an
makes
hour and a
sense,
half
I mean,
delay
Avenue
for
9
a
comes over here,
school.
like, well, where does that come out at?
It was
Right.
just like our with
I didn't even know.
district and
It's not on a
everyone,
map like
and they
that, it
just
doesn't
planned it
say
today
Avenue 9, I don't think.
out of nowhere.
Was it like an
Does
It's
it?
a behavior
On the Valley Children's, is Avenue 9?
Valley Children's.
So two students,
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
That's
Avenue 9.
because
we're
you
still
actually are
dancing around his.
turning off at 10 and getting on 9.
Instead of handling them.
There's a curve. and then
Yeah,
it
pretty
goes
much
9.
every meeting
No,
it's like
that's-
circles.
Or, you know, kind of stuff,
But-
yeah.
Not cool.
So
We'll
I
see.
have a question
Some
for you on
new type of
this
check-in
here.
and check out.
Now,
Oh.
I try to grade homework, by the way, whenever you guys, you know, like every couple of days.
It's actually a little
Not
less
every
with
day.
me because he doesn't react to me.
pathways and outcomes
So
here,
we're gonna
like,
try
I
with other
chose-
So
adults,
far I have 2 to 4 in.
the principal,
Do what?
and different
That's
teachers.
No worries.
and submitted something, and I was told, no, that it
So
didn't
we'll
follow
see.
that.
So they're gonna check in on
Yeah, yeah.
work and stuff?
So,
I usually
we're
try to write
just-
comments too.
There's
We narrowed it down
it was in the,
to
I wasn't here last,
being
Session, but it's in the
respectful to those
presentation.
around him,
where it talks about, can you
kids, the
handle
teacher,
their,
and the
their
space.
learning,
And that is our
like
target.
if somebody's having,
Of the CIQs.
And that is all we are
Have you
focusing
had
on.
to
He doesn't
deal
do
with the
anything,
CIQs?
But we're
And-
just focusing now on
No.
that specific thing because that is the worst. I mean,
That's what she said.
For him.
when
Right.
he's hurting others.
it mentions the C,
you
it says
know.
CIQ
Is
in
he
the
physical?
presentation, cause it's
Oh
in
yeah.
there.
He's
I
been
didn't
suspended 8 times.
Harp on the name as much, but it was, can you still teach? Can
Okay.
the students still learn?
So that's what we're
Those are the
focusing
CIQs,
on,
so
which kind of is helpful.
basically in your
because now
class,
just
have you been using that in your head?
of
And when did it work? Like,
yeah,
when did you have a kid that was
She told me that, or he.
shaking their leg and you decided not to address it?
Yeah,
Hopefully it does.
hopefully it just helps.
There's that one.
Right, I mean, I've submitted it
And it's easy to look
twice,
and
I
say,
obviously
well, we need to work on getting this work done, we need to work on this and that, but just focusing on the work will really that'll at least
Who's your champion?
that aspect.
And then you can move on.
Yeah.
They were crazy last week.
Well, I used to show a video that was champion, and then I changed it,
And you went to do it.
and most of you have seen it.
Like, okay.
That American lady that does the
So
whole,
angry. She's
have you heard that? Who's your champion?
over sometime.
Okay.
But then I did the little boy, and it's still kind of like, same thing, who
Oh
believed
yeah. In my head it was like,
Had
but she saw it from the first year too, so it's been like
little,
way better compared to now. So.
oh yeah.
And so the
kids,
I hate to be
Otherwise,
this
so
parent.
right after school, I only got one day leaving. I don't know. I wasn't here again today. Like last week, he was on
they
and
went
people were always so
head
nice.
around, they could take pictures.
He's so freaking nice. And I'm just sitting here. A couple more like, yeah, it was just so nice. We said we're right next
You know,
and then at the end they created
I'm
a
not
slideshow
doing
that
that.
had
One,
their
my one
interview
coworker
and
has
then like
18
My
everything
cats
they saw.
choose mine,
And then
so
Oh,
my
not
name.
mine.
they talked about like
But
the
when I don't wear them,
systems
everybody
around
else
it.
does.
my last one, like,
I didn't know that concept. Huh? What?
and I'm like,
Oh
cool.
wow.
And if I'm not looking straight at you,
Then the district said no, it was a
And
really
the
good
other one's
culture and it was
like,
totally their
it's like,
second standard. No, that's really cool.
well, it probably comes with it down, right?
Doing that.
auditory
It
function.
does.
really fun, and the kids loved it, and then they got to be interacting with, the zookeepers and asking them questions, and then that kind of helped with communication. And so they each had, each group
That's kind of funny
had
that
a
he said
different
that.
zookeeper. So these ones might be talking to the person that's doing the flamingos, these ones the elephants, and then they present it to the class.
Wow.
And so I wish that they still did that, because that was a really good
But the parents,
but it wasn't really
no, that's awesome.
So how many?
They'll call in sick. Yeah. The doctor's not No, it's not. They go and they will keep her.
Does he walk around with a
She
helmet
legit
on?
will have like a little running nose or something like that. It's like they're doing more harm than they
so
are.
I'm kind of multitasking and putting
Bring them to work on it.
Okay,
And they keep messing
so
with
I
my
can
leg. They
start
keep
copying and
they're just done with the tissue. They're gone already. I have 4 boxes. They're gone already.
Alright, everybody's back.
I have not brought any.
Almost.
I bought
Now
a brand new
everybody's
box.
back.
I just didn't let them.
No, I was saying everybody's back, and then you guys walked in. I'm like, okay, now everybody's back. All right, so another thing to take into consideration with your little cherubs is their attention span.
What?
Yeah, well, perfect example. Even your smartest kids may have attention issues, especially if you're boring. Your voice doesn't change. You're redundant. You take a lot of time to like set up your timer, set up your laptop, set up your tablet. All of those things are going to be death to an attention. I wouldn't even say ADD, because some kids, like I wasn't ever labeled ADD, but I can tell you 5 minutes into a lecture, I'm done. You'll be lucky if you get anything out of me. And point taken, I had a test done to see if I was ADD. And I was in my 40s. And I had had a stroke, and so they wanted to see how much was affected. So I go in and they say, okay, you're going to have 2 tests. One is 30 minutes long, one's 15. After you finish the 30, you'll go to the 15. It'll be seamless, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. They put me in an office. The lights go off. There's a lady at a desk behind me, and I'm like, I don't know what she's doing, whatever. And I'm sitting at a computer, and they're saying something, and I'm supposed to click every time I think it was I saw one. And I guess there was a camera in my face, and within 2 minutes, I glazed over and I quit answering. I thought I was awake, but they said I was completely non-responsive. And I was like, no way. You know, I mean, I have my master's, I almost have my doctorate, come on. But the fact is, yeah, I mean, I was labeled at 45 or 41, whatever it was, as ADD. But there's going to be a lot of kids in your class, they don't test, they don't know. And a lot of these kids have come from homes where they're not supported academically. So you're going to have them fading out even faster. So keep that in mind. A couple of guidelines. I'd always heard 1 minute for every year of their life. When I taught daycare, that was easy because I had 3s, 4s, and 5s. But when you get to high school, now you're talking 17, 18, 15, probably. Well, Steve has a different theory on this, but his or her age plus 2 minutes, which is great for the younger kids. And keep in mind that most of these kids cannot sit for more than 3 activities. But most of you, when you change activities, you change, what's the word? Location, but also body position. So that is good. The other thing is, keep in mind when you're changing activities, don't do exactly the same thing. Don't say read this article and then turn around and do something else reading. You're activating the same part of the brain. So think in your learning, what would be a good activity to spring to that would activate a different part of their brain, not the same part of their brain. And that's a good thing to keep in mind. Do you want to add to that real quick about anything?
Well, I don't know if y'all know, I go to church, and it's a big thing for me. And I had a conversation with our pastor who loves to talk. And some sermons were beginning to drift into an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm like, And I kind of looked around at our audience, and I'm not trying to be disparaging, but most of our audience, they're not college educated people, they're hard-working people, honest people, but they're not college educated. And I'm thinking, well, what's their training? They get a 10-minute little training and told how to go do something, and then they go do it or whatever. But they're not sitting in a. Have y'all gone to a PD where you've been sitting all day long, right? And you're like, okay, here's the breakout session. Like, oh, do I have to go? Where's the coffee? Right? My wife likes to say, I always have to stand in the back room because I got to use the bathroom every 10 minutes, right? She's kind of like that. Well, imagine my church, hour and a half, and I'm looking at body language, and I know they're not listening. But my pastor, no, I gotta go. I feel it. I gotta preach it. No, okay. I said, let me give you some data. TED Talks makes millions of dollars a year, right? You've heard of TED Talks. Do you know what the length of one of their TED Talks is limited to?
No. 30 minutes probably.
Less. 18 minutes.
Wow.
And they really want you to be at 15. They will not allow you to go over 18 minutes because they found that's the max for. Now think about it. Who's going to TED Talks?
The educated
People,
masses.
right? They're used to sitting down and listening, and they're saying, y'all can tolerate about 18 minutes. So then I went and did some more research and found that it actually is about a 15-minute reset. But if you can reset the audience's brain, you get another 15 minutes. So that's what I told the pastor. I said, look, you can do 45 if you want, or an hour, but you have to stop at 15 minutes and make everybody do something, like give a high five, or say amen, or whatever. And that lasted a while. And he's shortened his messages now. They're like 40, 45, but he hasn't broken them up into 15 minutes. Because what do I know? But, I thought it was very interesting that as an adult who's used to sitting in conferences, our attention span is about 15 minutes. I thought about, well, pair share, right? That's one thing. I didn't even tell a joke. Honestly, all of these things reset the brain, and you get another shot at that 15 minutes. And I would imagine that for kids, it's less. Now I would tell you one more thing, and I don't know if anyone except for Jenny and I, when we were growing up here in the valley, do you know how many stations we got on the TV?
3.
4.
I had 3 in Georgia. We didn't have that
NBC,
4th.
CBS, so Channel 24, Channel 30, Channel 47, and Channel 26. Oh, and Channel 18. Channel 18. That was it. 5 channels. And when you were a kid, you watched TV, and how long between commercials?
2.5 minutes.
2
It was
minutes,
about
2
18
seconds.
minutes, right?
Oh, between.
And then there was 2 minutes.
Love
and then,
Connection would always say 2
2
and 2.
There you go. But how much was the segment before you saw a commercial?
They say 20.
About 20 minutes. It's actually less now, but okay. So I did anyway, trained myself by watching TV to pay attention for 20 minutes. And then my 2 brothers, we'd be watching Gilligan's Island after school, and a commercial would come on, and we would wrestle with each other and mess around. And then in the middle of it, and I'd have them in a good old hole, and I could hear my brother going, commercial's over! Oh, I'll let go. And then we watched another 20 minutes. What do kids do today? Do they watch TV?
They watch YouTube videos.
I have 5 kids. None of them are interested in television. And they're doing this. Swipe, 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 looking at a video. And now YouTube's done studies that says if you can't capture them in the first 15 seconds, they won't watch your video. And the video's how long? 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes?
That TikTok too. The kids watch all the videos on TikTok, and they're like 45 seconds or something. That's about how long their attention is.
So if we trained ourselves to watch a 20-minute section of TV, what are the generation now, what are they training themselves to do? How much attention span do they have? 3 or 4 minutes, right? And then I walked into, my season of observations has started. I'm going to be doing Easton tomorrow. I was at your high school today, and I'll be at your place soon. And I'm looking at kids again. I'm reading body language, and they're like checked out. And I felt sorry because it's math. And I kind of looking at these kids like going, oh, who cares about the slope and parallel and perpendicular? You could read their face. So then the next challenge is this: identifying their styles, identifying your pacing, but also identifying how do we take the material that we're teaching and tie it into their life. I mean, you all have walked away with saying, you know what, I never used algebra the rest of my life. How many of you would say that, right? Y'all use algebra?
I don't know if I'd say it, but it's probably true.
We're doing a study, another seminar that I'm going to that says most Americans need to be able to master 8th grade math standards. And if they can do that, they'll be fine for the rest of their lives.
So why do we teach the rest?
Great question. That was the question that they brought up. Why are we making kids go all the way to calculus when all they really need to know is decimals and percentages and fractions? So yeah, there's some. So how do you take slope and make a kid excited about slope?
You know what though? Madera does this better than anything I've ever seen. They have kids all over campus finding triangles, measuring them, and it makes it fun and it makes it more applicable.
Sure.
And they're not confined to the classroom. They're running around all over the place. And I think, you know, that would have been fun to me. And I hate math. So, plus it's social.
The teacher was talking about skateboarding. I talked about, we have one of the career tracks at Madera High School is construction. Do you have any kids in construction? There's all kind of slope in that, right? Starting with the stairs, rise over run, that's perfect illustration. What about the roof? Is there a slope on your roof? And what happens when things intersect, and what kind of angle do you need, and all the joists that are in the attic? And I thought about that. I wondered, really what we're saying is, can you get to apply the math that you're learning, or the English that you're learning, or the science that you're learning, so that it becomes like, oh wow, this is cool, I can use that.
Well, and you might be able to stretch the attention span if they are interested. You know, if your kids are elementary school and they're way into volcanoes or tornadoes, you're going to have them gripped for a while. Maybe not 30 minutes, but you know, at least there's your tip. They are going to be gripped, but the key thing is make sure you're aware of, like, read the body language, read the lack of eye contact. When you recognize that, and even if you say, okay, I want everybody to stand up and, I don't know, touch your head, you know, just something to break it up. High school, I used to make them just stand up and go shake someone's hand and talk about it. Now with germs and all that, you can do fist bump, whatever. But I tried to break it up just because I was bored. I don't know if they were bored, but I was bored. So keep that in mind. With attention span, Steve's going to talk to about something else. Real quick, they talk about attention blocking, and these are the things that I don't think we always consider. Too much downtime while you're walking around trying to find your timer or the book. Have it all ready before you start school, because the kids, any second that they can turn to talk to their friend, they're going to. Okay, even your good kids. When you use the same materials over and over and over. Now granted, some of this stuff is expected to be used over and over again, workbooks, stuff like that. But you can present it in a different manner and maybe make it a little more exciting. Always get your students to work in the same pairs groups, mix it up, make them uncomfortable. You know, I think it's important for them, even at a young age, to maybe learn how to deal with somebody they don't like. Obviously, if it's dangerous or abusive, you don't want to promote that. But don't stick so rigidly to time limits. If you've got 15 minutes slated for activity and it doesn't go that way, call it. It's okay. You can always revisit it. If the majority of your kids have tuned out, you can always revisit it. But read to the majority. Don't sit and wait for a ton of feedback and just stand there with silence. Again, that's going to get the kids talking. And don't be stuck in your red zone. Or don't be stuck in your red zone. Be aware of your green zone. Because as soon as you're stuck with a group, they realize that's a ticket to misbehaving. We'll talk about rigor and differentiated curriculum next time. we're going to talk about your pacing and step by step, and then Steve's on.
All right, I want to freely admit that I stole this from Fred Jones, and just in case Fred Jones watches our videos that we're posting, and give him credit so we make sure that we don't get copyrighted. Step by step. So we talked a couple of times, was it 2 times ago, about praise, prompt, and lead. Do you remember we talked about that? And I said that your body was designed to find the things that are wrong first, right? And that we have a habit of coming over to a teacher and would say, I see your mistake, Michael, you need a subtraction here, fix that, and then you can move on. And then we said that may have reinforced the labels. Remember that talk I gave about the labels? And they reinforced the labels of, oh gosh, I'm a bad student. And I told you one of the ways to avoid that, and also to combat what we call the helpless hand raiser, those 6 or 7 kids that always raise their hand as soon as you finish with your direct instruction. How do we combat that? And so we said we wanted you to try praise, prompt by looking at the board and saying, look at step number 4, and leaving, and doing it all under 7 seconds. Okay? So let me give you an example. All right, tell me what step 4 is. You all should know it already, right? Is it listed? Can you follow that? If I were to come to a student and say step 4, and that's where you begin, would they understand what I'm talking about by looking at this? But you all had, I'd be willing to bet when you were doing math that that's the way it was taught to you when you were in class, right? Did they ever say this step 1, now watch this. What if we made each step a picture and gave it a label? Obviously I got this out of his book, but now I could say, hey, make sure that you do the multiplication step. You know which one is the multiplication step now? Mm-hmm. It makes sense, doesn't it? All right. The idea of a step-by-step with a visual instructional plan is that you have these labeled either in posters, which takes a lot of time to do, or you have it in your presentation. Okay? And it sounds like a lot of work, but I promise you that if you'll spend some upfront time putting these together, then you'll have a much easier time of tutoring your students by being able to say, okay, now make sure you do the compare step, and then walk away. Are you beginning to think of applications in your own subject areas? Let me give you here's one from algebra. How many of you remember FOIL? There it is. All of it labeled in a step-by-step action. So 1 binomial, 2, place, multiply, first, outside, inside, last. Simplify your answer. Here's the steps. So I could say, great, you did everything perfect up until you did the inside letters. Look at my example and see if you can find your mistake on the inside letters, and then walk away. Praise, prompt, and leave. Step by step. All right, so that's using the pictures. Now, let me give you one other thought. As you're teaching, how many of you, we'll see how smart you are, because this is an IQ test right here. You ready? How many of you know who Vince Lombardi is? Anybody? Anybody? Who's Vince Lombardi? Football coach for the Green Bay Packers. Y'all heard of the Green Bay Packers? Did you know that when they won, did you ever watch the Super Bowl?
Just for the concert.
Just for the concert. I watch for the commercials. What trophy do they give away at the end of the Super Bowl?
The Vince Lombardi Trophy.
The Vince Lombardi Trophy. Wow, he must have been some great coach. All right. He said this: practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Okay. So I know we have a couple coaches in the room. Kevin's one. Anyone else coach sports? Kevin, if you're breaking down the glove work at the shortstop position, what is the first step? The kid doesn't know how to play shortstop. He has a great bat, but you need a shortstop. What are you going to teach him first? He's getting cut from the team, but the kid can hit for 100 and the ball over the center
You're
field
teaching
wall.
him stance.
We wouldn't put him in shortstop.
All right, but let's pretend that you're going to try to teach this kid how to be a shortstop.
Yeah, put him in.
Starting with?
Stance.
Follow your footwork.
All right, so footwork. Okay, so now the question is, if the kid is learning footwork, and you've got to be in an athletic stance, we want his feet to be shoulder width apart, and then we want him to learn how to squat instead of bend over, right? So we're looking at, here's step one, we're going to be in an athletic position, feet work. The second step is, we don't want the kid to bend over to field the ball. And we explain to him, if you bend over, where does your head go? I can't see the ball anymore, and especially if I got a hat on, right? So we tell them to what? And it kind of sounds weird, and I know it's on video. Put your butt down, right? We want you to bend like this, and where is my head now? Okay, so now I'm working with the kid. I showed him footwork. I showed him how I want him to squat down. And let's say after the fourth time the kid does this again. What am I going to do? What am I going to do?
We just want you to sit like that.
What am I going to do? All right. Now, if I'm the old school coach, I'm probably going to do what? Get your head up and get your butt down. How many times do I have to tell you? Right? That's what coaches do. Kevin, you ever yell on the field? No, but you heard him. You've heard him yell like that, right? Now, okay, we're teachers. We can't do that. We've got a license. So what would we say if it was an English sentence?
Revisit.
How many? We've gone over this, right? You have to capitalize the beginning word of every sentence. And inside you're going, oh, you're killing me, Smalls. What are we saying? We're saying is, we can't go to step 2. I haven't even gotten to glove work yet. I haven't even shown you how to do the alligator. Like what? The alligator. The alligator, where we put in our top hand on top of the ball and our bottom hand with the glove. We have alligator. And then we have a surfing move. Say what? So we're here, we get the ball, we bring it to our belly, and then we got to surf. So we can throw, right? All these steps. Do I go to the surfing move yet if the kid's not putting his head in the right place? Here's the, that's a lot of words. I hope you're entertained. To say this, never go down to step 2 until step 1 is what? Master. Say it to your partner. Until they have mastery. They can't go to step 2 until they have mastery. They can't go to step 14 until they have mastery. Then somebody would say, it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. Another thought is this. If I'm not forming a good habit, then I am getting a... Think about that for a moment. Here's the hard part, because what we're saying for you as teachers is pay attention to the details. Okay? And one other thought. How many kiddos are behind already in your class? You're like, oh, I can see your expression. Do I really have to count that high? I don't know if I can. How many kiddos are behind? You guys are telling me already.
All but one, probably.
Right? Why are they behind? Well, if you're in high school, you're blaming the junior high teachers because they didn't do their job. And if you're a 7th grade teacher, you're looking at the 5th grade teacher because they didn't do their job. And if you're the 5th grade teacher, you're looking at 3rd grade and you're saying they didn't learn to read by the 3rd grade. And I will tell you that there is national data. Listen carefully, if you're an elementary teacher. National data that is proving that if a student can read at or above grade level by the 3rd grade, they are more likely to take honors and AP courses in high school and go to a 4-year college. The greatest single indicator of a student's success is their reading ability at 3rd grade. Think about that.
No pressure. No pressure for those of
Think
you.
about that. The greatest indicator of a student's success is not honors classes as a sophomore, but reading at or better at grade level by the 3rd grade. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. And we're, I think, allowing kids to move ahead before they've mastered their steps. And so I want you to think about that for a moment. All right. What are some types of things we can do with visuals and step-by-steps? So you saw math, you go, yeah, that looks great in math, but I don't teach math. Okay. Any of y'all teach history? Y'all teach history? What are some things we can do with history to show them step-by-step? Timeline. Good, you saw my little cheat notes. What else? Oh, I just thought up there.
What about English
Very
doing
good.
the hamburger?
Yeah.
So we have graphic organizers. Big thing in elementary is, have y'all heard of this? If you get lessons on it, and PD on it, and pressure on it, where's your thinking map, and how come it's not on the wall? Because they work. Good. How about just pictures?
Did you notice how many people just walked out on you?
I know.
I'm just saying.
Their attention spans are too short.
Yes.
They had another obligation. All right, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to have a little fun
Maybe go that way, I'll go this way.
with some step-by-step.
This is where you get them. Put them at each other. Oh, sorry. They have yours. I'm crazy over here with these big airplanes.
All right, step number one. Now, what can I do as a teacher if I'm looking for what? What am I looking for? Every step I want to see what? Mastery. How do I check for mastery?
Formative assessment.
I'm checking for understanding. So how do you check for understanding in your classroom? Are there multiple ways to check for understanding?
Yeah.
All right, tell me one.
You walk around, you know where it's.
Well, and especially with this project, I can walk around and look. Good. And I should not let go of my clicker. Because I can teach without having to be up in the front of class. Do you all do this? Do you teach from up here?
Yes.
It's hard, huh? And what I tell you, that if you are not forming a good habit, you're forming a bad habit. We can get into bad habit of camping out in front of you. Okay. What's another way of checking understanding? We haven't started yet, Kevin. What's another way of CFU?
Random non-volunteers.
Random non-volunteers. Great. What's another one?
Whiteboards.
Whiteboards. Good. What's another one?
Peer check.
Peer check. Pair share.
Sticky notes.
All right. Here's what I want you to do. Orient your paper with it on the up side. So it looks like the up is pointing up. All right. And I am doing what? Checking for understanding. The next step. Go step by step. Because you already messed up. You didn't even do the right step. The next step is that we are going to take that up and we are going to fold it down so it looks like that. So you're going to take the top and fold it down, and then you're going to fold it in a triangle. There you go. So fold the corners over. Nope.
Go the other way.
The other way?
Fold the corners over. There you go.
You guys look like I did when they used to do the paper bags on our textbooks. I just paid people because I couldn't do it.
doing that.
You do
I would've
fold the
paid you.
corner. And what am I doing right now, guys?
But I love to wrap.
What am I doing right now?
Checking for understanding.
And what am I? And I'm also reteaching.
No, we can see the other numbers.
I'm scared. My kid folded over.
And you just chop that off.
Okay.
All right, fold the nose down until fold line 2 becomes visible and creased along the dotted line. So it depends on how you fold it, but all the way down, there you go, perfect. Till it reaches the fold. Nope, all the way down to here.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah.
Lining up right.
Okay, so
That's
down. Okay,
Yeah.
actually, come here.
I'm not going to.
Alright, that's right. Let's see what you've got. That's
Okay,
right.
but line 2 is not visible.
That's right. That works. No.
Fail.
Well, he says line 2 should be visible, and I'm scrolling the other way, and I can't see any.
Well, this is typically the line now.
I don't know
The
any.
first step to flip it over.
Okay,
That's what we thought.
so you should have,
I did it. He told me to turn
yes.
the other way.
You're giving
I
me.
read the instructions on my visual.
Not the full.
Well, I was doing it this way.
All of you that are lost, I knew.
There we go.
Well, I'm supposed to be auditory.
It should look like this.
But what if you can't see the number?
It's okay, you can still fold it
Now
down.
seeing my letter.
Well, see, you're okay.
Giving them
You're
like
fine.
Well, I fixed it, and I can
Alright,
easy to still lose them.
now we fold the edges of the wings in towards your triangle fold, like this. So it should look like this.
Paper airplane, so it must be American. Turn the other way, that way they can see you folding it too.
That's right. That's right, that's right. That's right. That's
I
right.
think when we used to fold those in between classes, it's like half
Okay.
and half as you go.
Fold the right half, crease along the fold line, the wings line up the plane, and over the left half, and 4 so that the outside edges of the wings line up. In other words, do this. Fold it in half.
Yeah.
So it should look like that. Just folding it in half. Just fold it in half. There you go. There you go. Then you're going to fold this down along the 5 line.
Yeah.
So it should look like that. We're getting close. Oops, mine's upside down. And your leading fold flap should be on top. Yes. Yes. No. It's upside down. See? Perfect. So actually that's upside down. It is okay. See how that.
That's not great.
See how that.
Okay.
So the keys are on top. Nope, it's upside down.
Last night and I was like,
I'll do it later. That's all those things you think.
I'm probably gonna do it.
So I was gonna. Okay. Hold it back the way I had it.
Okay, last step.
What are some things you do?
Fold up with wing tips.
Call it a day.
Fold up.
It's the best one.
No, I know.
It's not gonna fly.
Couple years. It's all you meant.
That's it. That's
My
it?
friend that had like
Because it's staying together.
they're just like,
Alright,
it's like,
there.
I'm like, nope.
What are they throwing? You're gonna all come right here. Wait. Oh, yes, yes. I'm ready.
I feel bad. My attention sounds like the kids.
Okay.
Oh, there's a big one. I can see why once they have something like
You're running out of time, Mr. Thornton.
They're gonna want to play with it.
Yeah. Even like the manipulatives, I'm like, oh, I would so
Alright,
be playing with that.
so the flap should be on top. Like that, like that, like that. Yep, yep, yep. What did we just do? We went step by step. How many of you would say, boy, if I had to do an airplane, I would be horrible at it? How many of you know how to fold an airplane? No?
Ask me how to fold a note. I have that down pat.
All right, give it a whirl, see how it goes.
Woo, somebody's
That was mine.
wicked right there. That was even wickeder. That's
These fly pretty well, don't they?
Watch your eyes.
You can even pull these apart and make a little flap so it gives a little more lift.
Notice the difference between man and woman. I would have said everybody throw it that way. He just said throw it. He didn't care about eyes. You do. Clicker. Are you done? Here's your keys.
All right, step by step. Think about this. Auditory memory, even though we're talking about auditory learners, that's a little bit different. But
You got it.
if all you did tonight was listen for 2 hours, how much would you remember?
15 minutes of it.
The first 10 and the last 10.
Auditory memory equals short term. It's designed for speed. Second thought. Practice as soon as possible. Some of you are still doing homework. Homework used to be about extending the lesson, and we would go home as kids and try to figure it out and try to learn a little more. But now what we're saying is homework should be practice. They should already have mastered it in your classroom. The goal of homework now is to put it where? Into long-term memory. Your students can recite what you said 5 minutes ago and you're thinking, okay, they got it. We were training our mentors a couple weeks ago and we showed a clip of a teacher that was like really bad. And it literally said on YouTube, video of bad teachers. And his checking for understanding was, anyone have any questions? Okay, good. Right? All right. Practice as soon as possible. If you don't get a good habit, get a bad habit with performance. Can your students do it? Go step by step, but don't go forward until you get mastery. All right. So if creating paper airplanes was a critical component to your career, do you think we would have spent more time on this? Yes, because the next step would be what? Having you the paper again and having you do it by yourself. I do, we do, you do, right? We're going to get to mastery, step by step. And the next step after that would be to take the lines off the paper and see if you could do it with just a blank piece of paper. How many times do you think it would take to fold this airplane before you could do it without the lines on the paper? What is, anyone know how many times it takes to create a habit? Somebody said you have to do this. How many times before it becomes a habit?
Isn't it 10 correct times?
It's actually, I think it's closer to 40.
Yeah.
40 times before I can do it perfectly by myself. Practice, practice, practice. What did Vince Lombardi say?
Perfect practice makes perfect.
perfect practice makes perfect. Because somebody else said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer is practice, practice, practice. There was a time in our education system that we were so worried about following the pacing guide and getting through our lessons that we never mastered anything. We were the jack of all trades and master of nothing. And we would say that our curriculum was a mile wide and an inch deep. Common Core's changed that now, hasn't it? Now we're talking about constantly looking at, even talking about standard-based report cards, right? Mastery. Before we go on to the next thing, we need to master this one. How does having a step-by-step lesson help us with that help us hand raiser?
You can see what step that they've stopped on, and you can go back to those specific instructions.
Without having to teach the whole lesson all over again. Some of you are lovely people. And when a kid puts their hand up and says, I don't know, you spend 15 minutes doing what? Reteaching the entire lesson. And then the next kid. And so you taught the lesson, and then you retaught it 4 more. And it's no wonder why you all are tired and exhausted by the time you get home. All right. Now we are back to you. All right, guys, I have another meeting I have to go to. And so I'm going to leave you in good hands.
Laptop.
And yeah, I was going to put that in there, but that won't work right.
That won't work, right?
I will see you at, when am I going to see you?
December 16th.
December 16th. No meeting on the 2nd, because I'll be at a director's meeting in
He's really going fishing.
I wish.
He's just saying it's a meeting.
I wish. I get to go on New Year's Eve.
Right on. All right.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
So I tried to come up with something quippy, and good lessons need the quad. Get it for quad. Pacing. We'll talk about that in a second. Variety. Mix up your activities. Provide choice. You know, providing choice provides ownership, right? And accountability. And vary your assessments. I think Mr. Land said something about assessments. And mix up your activities. Again, cater to what your kids' learning styles are. And I added challenge. We're going to talk about rigor. We might actually talk about it a little bit today. But also make sure it's easy for all to follow. So you've got your step-by-step and your visuals. It makes sense. Any of you that are trained in Avid, everything's visual. Like if we're a study group and she has a problem, she gets up and writes it up on the board. And we all help her. We don't give her the answer, but we'll tell her like, okay, what's step 1? And you have her write it. And then you say, okay, what do you do next? And then she does it. And you write what the step is. And that's what Avid does. And Avid's program is incredibly successful. So I think it's safe to say you eliminate confusion, but you also bring clarity. And you guys don't have to repeat yourselves so much. You can say, ask a partner, or walk over and see where they're stuck, give them a prompt, and walk away, and then go back and check it. It's important to make sure that you're like holding everybody accountable. So I could say, ooh, you having trouble on that? Okay, you need to work, go back to step above. Pacing, it seems like a really easy thing, but it's not. So pacing is the skill of creating a perception that a class is moving at just the right speed. But what is just the right speed? Like some days my kids could keep up with my fast talking and my barking instructions, and other days I just got blank looks. So you have to know your class, and you have to know what it is you're trying to achieve and how you can pace that to keep their brains active and their attention span with you. When instruction moves too slowly, there's your kid. Or they're pulling out their phone and looking down at their crotch, and you know that that's not what they're doing, is smiling at their crotch. It's clearly a phone. And if it's too quick, you've got the kid screaming, right? Or slow down, I don't understand what you're saying, which of course puts an incredible halt on what you're doing because your train of thought is probably a step ahead. Kid screams that, you have to turn around and go back. And that stinks. Okay, yeah, we're almost there. All right, so one of the things I was have any of you ever done Socratic seminar? Sort of. What normally would happen is we would create a huge circle with, but what I might do is just pair you guys, make your table groups. How about you go with them, and then Mr. Lane, you'll go with them, and you guys will go with them. So what you're going to do is I'm going to put a topic up on the board. The point in Socratic seminar is this. Everybody says, oh, it's a debate. It's not really a debate. It's conversation. And that's things you have to teach your kids, right? Like if she says something, I need to say, I hear what you're saying, and this is what I heard. However, this is how I feel. Now, I think you can tell in that one little exchange how many things you're going to have to teach to. You're going to have to teach to get them to move their chairs, which was something I didn't figure out. And they would scrape their desks, and it would just grate me. I would like literally just get the chills. So instead of saying, this is how I want you to do it, and eliminating all that, I didn't do that. So you've got these kids, and you've got to teach them how to listen, how to respond appropriately. They can't say, that's gay, that's stupid, you're an idiot. You have to teach them that. Do I recommend Socratics for everyone? No. But what I want to do right now is have you guys do a mock Socratic so you can understand the higher level thinking. It is not about being right. It's about discussion. So I'm going to put a moral thing up here on the board, and you are going to discuss it. And it's important for you not to cut anybody off. It's important for you to hear them state what they have to say, and then you to acknowledge it, reiterate, and then share your opinion. Got it? Okay. I'm going to come up with a topic. Oh, I could get really controversial. So, just so you know, I usually start off with something really easy, like Coke or Pepsi, elephants or pterodactyls, I don't know, whatever. What I want to put is something about immigration, because that's such a hot button. I'm going to have to do that. My handwriting's gotten terrible since I've been out of the classroom, so the current situation. The statement is, the current situation regarding immigration is a necessary evil. You either agree or don't, but you don't have to come to a complete, it's the whole point is fostering discussion about it. So all of you are going to bring different information to the table. You're going to have different opinions, different emotions, okay? Discuss it in general. Do not say, this is my opinion. Just say, what about this? How about this? Okay? You guys will be over there, so you guys kind of got a big group. I'm going to have you guys go for about 10. Discuss. Now, if I was having a student, the students do this, they would be taking notes the whole time. Because we would be discussing an issue that was somewhat pertinent to my class. But in Avid, we talked about this kind of stuff all the time. Do you remember in Richmond, California, when the girl was brutally raped outside of the high school dance? Probably not. We discussed that. When 9/11 happened, I actually got him into a group and we just talked, debriefed, talked. And I think that was therapeutic for me. I hope it was for them. I don't know. I mean, really, it was all about me. No, I'm just kidding. But so I want you to take 10 minutes and discuss. What you would be talking about are factors, who's affected. Let me think. Cost. Okay, we're talking about the nuts and bolts. Got it? Go.
Start this thing off, guys.
Yeah, let's start there.
So,
would say, even if you're someone who lives in a more predominantly like homogenous community, you're still affected via like media, social media, the news, anything like that, they kind of created this culture that
So what are some of the
feel like
pluses?
wherever you are, it is censored and evil, and that you need to be aware that it just feels like such a regression in terms of like how we want to view ourselves in terms of civil rights. This is becoming
absolutely take jobs away, but it could also fill jobs that others don't.
And what's important about this is some of you may choose to play the devil's advocate just so nobody knows what you're choosing. As a
Well,
teacher,
it's certainly
I
a
really
net
know
gain for
somebody
teaching,
Feels very strongly
no
about
matter
this
what.
and wants you to know their
Because I mean,
possibilities
schools
and like.
need students,
And that's
and the United States is an all-time low in its birth
That
rate,
can go either way,
historically,
and that like
all-time
they're
low.
right.
And your
they're
kids,
gonna, like,
even with
So,
talk
hard
to
of
people
hearing
about
things,
it.
you
In
think
that
from
way
the perspective of
that's
a
like,
teacher,
no, this
you
is
go,
what
okay,
we need to
well,
talk about.
bullying
It's like,
gotta have kids to
and
have a
have them
job.
discuss it.
It's
It's gonna be probably rudimentary
pushing
for
their
elementary school.
views on you, and
At
then
the same
that
time,
if it's
You
a
gotta realize
work
that
situation,
it
you're
also
stuck on
makes it
whatever.
difficult to
Then it's even family,
differentiate
then you're even more
instruction
stuck
and
whether
do
you
Yeah.
go back and
remedial
you're like, I just don't
students.
want to engage with this.
And
That's what my understanding is.
Right.
And I-
changes
Yeah.
the sort of dynamic of what you're teaching.
That's how I'll sit off that.
And I think it makes it, can make it more difficult, a more difficult learning environment for everybody. Challenging, I guess.
Okay, so go with, discuss this whole immigration, necessary evil,
A lot of those strategies that
or
we're teaching to
human rights.
adults are strategies that we should be
And then
teaching
it's
to
also
adults
the
as well.
community
So
that doesn't.
But see, the whole point is when your partners have the same might change
System as well.
your on the
Because
fence.
they have a lot of all documented. It also affects the classroom environment.
You want
It
this?
also affects the
especially when I have those parents who
and if these immigrants are migrant.
And the parents, like if they're studying different, they like the kids are sitting there in class worrying about it, waiting for it, thinking about it, and they're not here, they're.
Then they're like gone, or they come back right before testing, and they've missed all of this, and it's like,
They fall behind.
yeah.
Yeah. I had a student.
Yeah, somebody was, I have a friend of mine, I don't know how accurate this is, but he knows someone's wife who teaches in Madera. And they were saying that the school that she's at it's going to be deemed a heritage school. Are we familiar with that? I guess so.
Friends, but then also like who had.
So what I found interesting about that though is they told her, because she's Caucasian, they said, you'll be here for maybe another 2 years, then we don't need you anymore. So they're gearing the school toward this Hispanic population. But what I found interesting is she claimed anyway, that they're going to bus students to a different school if they don't speak Spanish. And so that's kind of an interesting aspect, because then you look at that and you go, well, this is not discrimination. Yeah, I mean, this is the Brown versus the Board of Education, where people wanted to integrate schools rather than continue on with segregation. And so in that sense, I understand the desire for that, to have a school that's geared toward a specific set of culture, ideals, history, food, all of these things. But at the same time, that's changing the culture that
Is
these
it a
people
necessary
live in.
evil, or is it a human rights violation?
And I guess you could argue that's a plus, but what about the kids that can no longer go to that school?
The kids that have gone to that.
Right. And the teachers who've been there, who were told you can't live there.
From my perspective, but the process looks like it's been all intertwined and not really set up in a way that is conducive to where they should be or how it could be done in a better way.
Functional.
Yes,
I
could be more
understand.
functional.
And incorporate.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
different
no,
cultures.
I agree. I think that
But
the way, I mean,
why dedicate a whole school
and everything, but I think the way that it's been
Well, I'd be
presented
curious if that
and what I do know
helps the
about
learning
it,
outcome.
it doesn't
That,
seem like
in
it's
student
super
achievement.
functional.
No, this is an experiment, as far as I can tell, right? There's no data to support that it would
Being set
improve.
up in a way to make it very difficult to like get through the process and to do that in a way
I don't know if I.
that is respectful to the people involved.
You know, did you know that, I didn't know this. Years back, I was
Well,
at
it
an
could
AVID
be a
conference and they
political,
brought in some
you know,
immigration attorneys
more
to
than one
explain
where
things to
it's-
us. Like
You know,
the
it could be.
process.
I'd like to
Do you know
more
that
about
once
it,
you
but
file
it's
a
just interesting that
paper,
these things are
it's not
happening,
like,
and
let's
it
say I
is
filed
related
in
to interest.
2019.
And the
It
question
it's
is,
not like
is that
they would
better
get
the
back to
culture
me by
these people
220.
are coming into?
They basically
And is it better the
random,
culture
they're
of
so
the
far
people that are
behind, they
currently
will
living in,
randomly pick
you know?
a year and
I
focus
don't
on
know.
that year.
It's-
So it might be 1986, but you did your
I guess people
paperwork
won't
when you were
really know
supposed to,
down the road.
right?
Because if
But
you
how
have half
shitty
your
is that?
classes in Spanish and half of them in English, you become the master of none. Right? Like you're proficient in
Really?
50% of everything.
See, that to me changed everything. Because I was like,
Because I have students
can't they
in
just go
high
through the
school
process?
who
Well,
aren't
yeah,
proficient
but-
in English, and they've been studying that
Because it's not
for
set up
11
in
years.
a way that makes it conducive.
Very
to,
true.
like,
I mean, it is
yes,
true,
I did
right?
all my
And so
success
if you
and
have
I-
someone
and
who
I did it
studied
all where,
English
you know,
for
I have
6
all of my ducks in a
and
row,
Spanish for
that
6,
doesn't
I mean,
mean
cumulatively, right?
that
Like
it's
you,
gonna get processed
do half and
in a
half.
manner, or that it's gonna be, you know.
are you going to master
Yeah,
both?
see,
Or
like,
are you
one
going to
of those
master
processes,
neither?
like, we've all
I don't
been in
know.
a situation where
It'll
you've
be an
been told
interesting
that
thing to
this is
see
the
how that all
process that you
plays
have
out.
to go through, and you have to check all these boxes, and you have to
If
get this
mastery
here
is
and
the
that
thing.
there, and you do everything that you're supposed to do, and then there's always that like, but actually,
Yeah, and-
I needed you to do this
Put up there the
instead,
cost.
and
What's
so
the
you're
cost?
gonna have to either start over, or you don't get the end result.
I have no idea.
To-
I just found out about it like
Yeah.
a month or so
It's like
ago.
we've all been in a process like that, at some point where it's like, you know, going to DMV and like filling out the paperwork and waiting in line and getting the number, and then you get up to the window and they're like, actually, you need to fill out this one, we need you to
They
go
didn't tell
back
you that? You're like,
and get you another number, and then you have to wait like another, you know.
Just
like-
imagine that, but with your life.
Exactly. So it's like we've all been in a process like that, and it just seems like one of those processes where it's like, but actually, I need you to fill out the blue form, not the light blue form.
Then they do things that makes you even question the process, like when they're putting 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds on trial,
Well, I guess they get
like that.
what
At
they
some
want,
point,
right?
it
So they
loses
get the
any
people
sense
who
of,
can
well,
speak
that's
Spanish
just
at a
the
cheaper
bureaucracy of it. No, that's
talking about
insane.
life.
Yeah.
It's not.
That child will be ruined for life by that experience. That's crazy because you realize too that as a parent, if you're the one doing this, and you've got children that were not born here, then what do you, I mean, as a parent, you come over here to make a better
Yeah,
life, and here you
they're
are,
changing that
you're
too.
walking around, people are saying, oh, you got your green card or whatever. Well, yeah, I did my work. I did what I was supposed to do, but there's still stereotypes, right? And they're not gonna be able to necessarily get it done. And their kids, meanwhile, are
Well, I'd be curious
being
what the
targeted
end goal is.
at the border.
I don't know enough about it.
Does anyone know how it affected the DACA? I
Is
know
it
it was
to be
affecting
bilingual?
DACA for a while, like
To live
people
in
had that like,
bilingual culture.
process. My friend had it, and
Or
she
to
was
Well,
a
they closed it, they're not
Hispanic
accepting
heritage.
okay, then she must have got hers because she was part of the DACA program and she was
Right,
a teacher. And
that's
I'm like,
the area
you've been a
that-
contributing member,
I don't know
and that
what the
they're trying to
numbers are.
resolve
Right.
and
85%
up in the air. But I think she had
Hispanic.
it all to where she could prove all her stuff. And it's like you've got people who can prove I've been contributing, going to school, and
Paying my taxes.
now in the community doing like teaching. It's like
But they haven't said, like, I know that they have that kind of whatever, but do they become citizens? You know,
No, they still have to go
they
through the
still-
process, right?
Yeah, and they haven't just, I think there isn't, they haven't told them like, oh, in this time you will become a citizen.
Right.
They're stuck in that phase right now and they don't know
Right.
if they're going to keep extending, renewing the permits, because I know they were not renewing one card.
Oh,
So that's another.
that
thing.
changes everything.